in 2 Kings 23. We're going to talk about Joshua. Now the king sent them to gather all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem to him. The kings went up to the house of the Lord with the man of Judah, and with him and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the priests and the prophets and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their hearing all the words in the books of the covenant which had been found in the house of the Lord. Then the king stood by the pillars and made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord and keep his commandments and his testimony and his statutes with all his heart and with all his soul, to perform the words of the covenant that were written in the books, and all the people took stand for the covenant. So here he is. Remember Joshua, they came up and told him they had the books, right? And he said, let's read them. Well, he brought everybody together, and he's saying, now, let's start following these. He says, let's start doing what God's telling us to do. And then in verse 4 it says, and the king commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, the priest of the second order, and the doorkeeper to bring out the temple of the Lord, all the articles that were made for Baal, and he burned them outside Jerusalem in the field of Kindra, and carried their ashes to Bethel. Then he removed the adulterous priests, whom the king of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places of the city, and Judah in his place all around Jerusalem, and those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun and the moon, to the consulates, and to all the host of heavens. And he brought out the wooden images from the house of the Lord to the brooks, Kindra, outside Jerusalem, burned it all, and the brooks Kindra, and ground it to ashes, and threw its ashes on the graves of the common people. Then he tore down the ritual booths of the perverted persons that were in the house of the Lord, where the women wove hangings of the wooden images. And he brought all the priests from the city of Judah and defiled the high priest, where the priests have burned incense from Geba to Beersheba. Also he broke down the high places at the gates, which were in the entrance of the gates of Joshua, the governor of the city, which were to the left of the city gates. Nevertheless, the priests of the high places did not come up to the altar of the Lord of Jerusalem, but they ate unleavened bread among their brothers. And he defiled Tuphron, which is in the valley of the sons of Hinnom, that no man might make his sons or daughters pass through the fire of Malachi. Then he removed the horses of the kings of Judah and dedicated it to the sons, and the entrance of the house of the Lord. But the chamber of Nahum, officers were within the courts, and he burned the chariots of the sons with fire. So right now what he's doing is he's cleansing everything. He's getting rid of all the altars, all the other god stuff. Even the chariots that were dedicated to him, anything that was dedicated to him, he's cleansing it, isn't he? He's cleansing out everything. And then in verse 12 he says, the altars were on the roof, the upper chamber of Azrael, where the king of Judah had made the altars which Meshach had made in the two courts of the house of the Lord. The king broke down and pulverized there, and threw their dust in the brooks of Kindra. Then the king defiled the high places that were east of Jerusalem, which were on the south of the mountain of corruption, which Solomon, king of Israel, had built for Ashtor, the abomination of the Sidonians, for Kesma, an abomination of the Moabites, and for Malcolm, the abomination of the people of Ammon. And he broke it in pieces and scattered pillars, and cut down the wooden images, and filled their places with bones of men. So he's tearing these down, and then he puts bones of men there. Why would he put bones of men there? If you remember, Leviticus law says that if somebody died, you had to be clean for 7 days. So if you went around them bones, you had to be away for 7 days, didn't you? So it's to keep people away. Moreover, the altar that was at Bethel, in the high places with Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, had made both that altar and the high places. He broke down, and he burned the high places, and crushed it to powder, and burned the wooden images. And Joshua turned, he saw the tombs, and were there on the mountains. And he sent and took the bones out of the tombs, and burned them on an altar, and defiled according to the words of the Lord, which the man of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. Then he said, "What gravestone is that I see?" So that man of the city told him, "It is the tomb of the man of God who came from Judah, and proclaimed these things, which you have done against the altar of Bethel." And he said, "Let him alone. Let no one move his bones. Say, let his bones alone, which the bones of the prophets who came from Samaria." Now Joshua also took all the shrines of the high priests, the high places that were in the city of Samaria, with the king of Israel. He made them to provoke the Lord to anger, and he did not them according to all the deeds he had done in Bethel. He executed all the priests of the high places who were there on the altar, and burned men's bones on them. And he returned to Jerusalem. Then the king commanded all the people, saying, "Keep the Passover of the Lord your God, as it is written in this book of the covenant." Such a Passover surely had never been held since the days of the judges who judged Israel, nor in the days of the king of Israel and the king of Judah. But in the 18th year of King Joshua, this Passover was held before the Lord in Jerusalem. Moreover, Joshua put away all those consulates, mediums, and spiritisms, the household of God and idols, all the abominations that were seen in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem, that he might perform the word of the law, which were written in the book of Hezekiah. Now before him there was no king like him, who turned to the Lord with all his heart, with all his soul, and with all his might, according to the law of Moses. Nor after him did any arise like him. So he's cleaning all this out. He's like, no more. We're done with it. So he takes care of everything. And in verse 28 it says, "Nevertheless, the Lord did not turn from the fierceness of his great wrath, with which his anger was rose against Judah, because of all the provocations at which Manasseh had provoked him. And the Lord said, I will remove Judah from my sight, and I have removed Israel, and will cast him off the city of Jerusalem, which I have chosen, in the house of which I said, my name shall be there." So remember, the chapter before, they prophesied. The one prophet came up and said, we're going to destroy Judah. But then he tore his robe, he repented, and asked for forgiveness. And they said, we'll let you reign, and you will be buried with the kings, but you will not see the destruction of Judah. So this is what happened. And they're saying it happened after he passes away. Now the rest of the acts of Joshua and all that he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the king of Judah? And in this day, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went to the aid of the king of Syria to the river Ephraim. And the king of Joshua went against him, and the Pharaoh Necho killed him, and Megiddo went, he confronted him. Then his servant moved his body in a chariot from Maggah, brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own tomb. And the people of the land took Jehovah, the son of Joshua, anointed him, and made him king in his father's place. Jehoshaphat was 23 years old when he became king, and reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Emma, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done. Now Pharaoh Necho put him in prison at Riblah in the land of Hamath, that he might not reign in Jerusalem. And he imposed on the land a tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. The Pharaoh Necho made Lichamon, the son of Joshua, king in the place of his father Joshua, changed his name to Jacob. And the Pharaoh took Jehoshaphat and went to Egypt, and he died there. Then Jericho gave the silver and gold to the Pharaoh, but he taxed the land to give money according to the commandment of the Pharaohs. And he acted the silver and gold from the people of the land, from every one according to his assessment, and gave it to Pharaoh Necho. Jeroboam was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zebediah, the daughter of Hannah of Rumah. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father had done. You know, what we learn from this is you look at Joshua. And what did Joshua do? Joshua wanted to follow the Lord completely. He removed all the idols. He removed all that stuff. Now in churches today, we got to be careful. We can fall into the same temptations. We can bring stuff into the church that shouldn't be here. We can bring in, and some of it can be traditional stuff. Some of it can be stuff that's always done in the past. We're saying, well, we got to realize, when God says we're supposed to do something, we're supposed to follow through with it. And Joshua was one of those guys. When he found out what the word said, what did he do? He went and cleansed everything. He cleaned things up. He moved out the evil stuff. And he didn't let it come back in when he was reigning. You know, us as Christians, we should be doing the same thing in our lives. We should be careful what we put in. It's easy with media, with TV, everything. What do? Do you let the evil get in? Just think, most people, what they do, they get their Bible, they have it on Sunday morning, they bring it with them, they go home, lots of times it's in the car, they never get to go get their Bible. Sunday morning, you're like, where's my Bible at? And they're like, I can't find my Bible anyplace. Here it is out in the middle of the car. But if their Bible's out in the middle of the car, what did they do? They never even looked into the Word of God all week, did they? They never even checked. How do you stay strong with God if you're not staying in the Word? If you're not following what it says, if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, how do we know what's right and what's wrong? We have more tendency of falling back if we're not in the Word every day than if we take that time to read it in the morning. Would you go without eating? Just think, would you go from Sunday morning and not eat until next Sunday morning?
Not all week.
That's what we do. That's what we do when we don't read our Bible. You're not being fed all week. You're starving yourself. We need to be like Joshua. We need to be sitting there meditating on the Word, learn what the Word says, and following through. It don't mean just reading it. We need to make sure that we are the ones following what it says. It's not just saying, it's doing what the Word says. Let's go to prayer.